friends. Welcome to the podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a very special guest. His name is Dr. Ivan Zak. He's a veterinarian, an entrepreneur, and a lean thinking evangelist. He's the creator of SmartFlow, a workflow optimization system for vet practices, and he is currently leading Veterinary Integration Solutions. He just finished his MBA dissertation studying how lean thinking can help reduce burnout in veterinary organizations. So he fits perfectly into what we love to talk about on the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today, Dr. Zak. Welcome.
Thanks for that introduction, Julie. I'm not sure about the evangelist. That sounds very powerful. I don't think I'm just, I think, wondering generality.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing in this arena, and I'd like to learn a little more about it. So can you tell me about the study, what it was about, and why you decided to do it?
Sure. So the study was a part of the dissertation. I had to pick a topic because I decided to do an MBA 3 years ago. It was supposed to be 2. I stretched it, procrastinated too much.
That's okay.
And the dissertation was the part that I was kind of dreading. But then through my experience with consolidation in our space, and as we know, there's about 20% consolidated, and I think we're still moving at a full speed and maybe chasing Europe, where it's about 67%, I think now. So I saw some struggles that both consolidators and the veterinarians are going through, and that interested me from the management side. But also, more and more we're realizing this problem of burnout and the suicide in the industry, and having an experience myself with the burnout to a pretty significant degree, I was wondering, are there things that we didn't look at yet? Not the self care, which is super important, and focusing on work-life balance and all of those good things, but is there something that industry or we can do other than just give it to veterinarians and to deal with themselves? So this is where the topic came about. I was trying to find the business methodology that potentially could solve the problems of burnout in our domain. And therefore, for the research part, I surveyed close to 1,500 veterinary professionals, and just wanted to establish a couple sort of ground pieces of information. Are we truly burned out? And then can we say that the burnout is more significant in consolidation than in non-consolidation? And as the literature research part and just the general research for the dissertation, I picked lean as a sort of business methodology, or the flow methodology, if you will, just because I was fascinated with it through my experience with SmartFlow, which was a product that we created.
Okay, so some of this lean thinking technology is kind of what you were trying to drive the study towards. Is that what I'm talking
Well, that was a hypothesis. So in a master's degree, which is in international healthcare management, I was trying to see if we can. It's a hypothesis that can we use lean, and because throughout the research I found out how much they use lean thinking, which is there's slight difference there, but important difference in human health. And I was wondering, could we take that as an example and then see if that could influence how we conduct business in veterinary medicine? And then could that improve the experience of the frontline staff? So that was the hypothesis. And we made a couple of conclusions that were interesting.
So can you explain lean thinking to me and the other people that might be out there that are not real familiar with it?
Yeah, so lean comes from quite a lot of people probably heard about it in Toyota. Car manufacturer. So it's sort of the process of eliminating the waste, and there's quite a few principles in there. So eliminating the waste in the production, the waste of time, the waste of inventory. Then there is principles like just in time. So at the certain station on the factory, you have products arriving just in time for production, so they're not waiting in line. So there's quite a few principles that came out of that, and multiple industries picked up lean as a methodology. and one of them was human field, and in some instances it did leave a bad taste because it was just implemented and it didn't resonate to, you couldn't just copycat from the factory to the hospital, and a lot of people accepted it as sort of lean and waste elimination. It's sort of like eliminating unnecessary roles and people. So people immediately started thinking that they're gonna, lose their job. As any change, right? You change
Yeah, we
anything,
don't
it's like,
want
oh my
that,
God, we
right?
charge,
Yeah,
we
the
changed
sky is
them.
falling.
Yeah, we changed the color of the mop bucket. I'm going to be fired.
Oh, yeah.
But, but the point is that it was applied in Great Britain, in the British healthcare system. They have it similar to Canadian. It's a unified system, and it didn't go well from what I heard. It just kind of left a bad taste. But then I was researching it in US, and there's a group that implemented. Well, one gentleman in particular, so Dr. John Tasson, who's now sort of my inspiration in this project. He applied it in Wisconsin healthcare system, and he had similar experience, really good results, but it didn't stick. It didn't become the muscle memory of the teams. And he went back, and instead of abandoning the methodology, he converted it so it fits better with the healthcare system. And he produced 6 principles that are sort of leading the methodology. And among them, number one is that lean is a continuous improvement culture. So it's not about just following the rules, but it's continuously looking for improvements. The second one is that lean is the value creation tool rather than waste elimination. So it's seeking for additional value, which is completely different angle to look at. Then that lean fosters the unity of purpose. So making sure that everybody is connected around the vision, mission, the core values of the organization, and then respect for people. And that's the one that I make an emphasis in the literature review and my conclusions, is that by promoting and respecting people that do the actual work, such as technicians and veterinarians, consolidation might have a significant impact on our experience. And then the fifth one is that the importance of visual representation. So when you do the changes, when you observe the change, they need to be visual. So to see the results, you need to show to your staff that the results are there. And in human healthcare, they applied a lot of boards, basically whiteboards with initiatives that are brought up by the frontline staff, how they're executed, and just progression. And it was amazing to see that in a couple of hospitals that we visited with my co-founder, Dr. Bill Griffin, in San Francisco General Hospital in particular. We had this executive training on lean thinking, and the CEO had the board that anybody could look at and see what she's doing and what are her projects. And it's just total transparency throughout the organization. And the last principle, which is super important, is that there's a flexibility embedded into methodology. So it's not a rigid, you stand here, do that, and I'll watch you. It's really, here's the framework, and then there's flexibility how you apply it. So those are the 6 principles that they applied in human healthcare, and they went not only at the level of the Wisconsin healthcare system, but beyond in multiple hospitals. So it's a very big network right now. And Dr. John Tasson, who started it 12 years ago, he became my inspiration on trying to replicate that in the veterinary domain. And he actually inspired and helped. We took a couple courses with him. So we are super excited to try to apply it through my new initiative.
Amazing. Yeah. All those 6 things sound like absolutely things that we could implement in veterinary hospitals. But I understand what you're saying about that it scares people, that change.
Yeah.
Taking those steps will cause fear that they're going to lose their job or something like that.
Well, in any change, and if you think about the reason why I focused on consolidation, because I think there's a tremendous opportunity that comes with the consolidation, and there's this sort of dogma that consolidation is bad, it takes our practices away and things like that. We interviewed on our podcast the doctor, I'm blanking on her name, but she got an amazing career within the Mars organization, and they consolidate. There's Benfield, there's VCA, there's
Right.
Blue Pearl, and there's so many new careers that people can obtain through the corporate, so they don't have the ceiling of I'm a technician or I'm a vet, and they can progress, pivot and do other things. Then there's also, consolidated investment into projects, pharmaceuticals, and things like that. And also there is an ability to apply management practices at scale. And that was my sort of conclusion. I actually was kind of looking for a result where it's like consolidation is bad, so therefore we need to apply something. But I failed to prove that, which is good.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, because there's so many practices that are going that way now. If you proved that it was
exactly.
terrible, we'd be in big trouble, right, as an industry.
Exactly. But that's the thing, because change, as you mentioned, it comes through the consolidation. There's significant change, and what I find and what I see is that it's empowered people that have been the community veterinarian, and they were the heart of the town, and everybody knew them, and then all of a sudden they sell their business with all their staff. And all of a sudden, it's like staff thinks that the practice owner betrayed them, and then they feel like they lost the power of making decisions. So veterinarians usually are very driven, sort of type A personalities, and they
Absolutely.
become business owners. And
Right.
then after that, they're not empowered because they don't have any control. So I think that in consolidation, if consolidators will focus on providing that feedback loop and the power at the local level, then lean actually would work pretty well to facilitate that change from one state to another.
Yeah, it sounds like it absolutely would. So, in your study that you did, can you tell me a little bit about the big light bulb things that you discovered? What exactly were the things that you found, and what surprised you, and what kind of people did you surveyed? Veterinarians, technicians, receptionists, the whole veterinary team, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. We deployed this survey, and we did it in a way of social media push. So we applied
Okay.
everything we knew about marketing. We sponsored a bunch of ads, and whoever works in the veterinary setting, they could contribute by filling out the survey. It's a
So there was a
60.
mix of people that worked in corporate practices and private practices.
Yeah. So
There
that was one
wasn't a
slice.
bias there. Okay.
Yeah, that was one slice. So we asked them, are you in corporate or private? Another slice was we asked for their age. We also asked for who they are in the practice. Are they a technician, a manager, and the veterinarian? So that allowed us to slice the data post the survey. And then the tool that we use is a professional fulfillment index. It was developed in Stanford, and they successfully compared it to BMI, which is another tool that people use to assess the burnout. And this one helps to assess the empathy and the compassion towards your work, as well as the burnout.
Okay.
And the interesting finding was that most people that are working in the veterinary industry, they love their job, but most of them are burned out. So we kind of got that established that yes, there is a problem, and the majority of those people, they reported that they were burned out. The second finding, there was two findings that I was surprised with. Well, one not so surprised, but that not what I was looking for, but they came out of the study. One is that the people that are more burned out are people around 30 years of age, 30 and
Hmm.
younger.
That's
And the
interesting.
baby boomers were the happiest ones. So
That's really interesting.
that was an interesting finding, because you
You
would
didn't
think that,
expect that, I imagine.
no, you would think, if you've been doing it for years and years and you're just sick of it.
Right.
But then we found that, and I don't really have a, explanation to that. I think it just creates another question for the next research, which would be interesting. But my personal hypothesis, not proven by anything, is just about the types of generations that we're having and how people take their career, work-life balance, and these things into consideration when they're choosing the career. And the whole sort of James Harriet kind of veterinarian for life is probably not what people are doing these days. I mean, I pivoted 10 years into, after two vet schools. I had to go through two vet schools
Oh,
to be
wow.
licensed in Canada. And
Yeah.
10 years later, I couldn't do it anymore. So it was,
So
I did find it.
you couldn't do it because you were burned out after 10 years?
No, actually, the burnout was sort of in the middle of it.
Okay.
I did too much of the combination of emergency medicine and the locums, and the idea was that if I'll do emerge, I'll do 4 shifts on, 6 off, and I'll have all the time in my life to enjoy it. And what I ended up doing, what most vets do, I worked 4 nights and then 6 more days as a locum. So,
Right, right. Because you just get sucked in.
exactly. And then that really, really, did a number on me. And then also emergency medicine. I just shout out to all my colleagues in emergency medicine, but I think it's just never appreciated. And whenever you talk to someone, they find out you're a vet, and the typical, oh, I love to be a vet. And, I wanted to be a vet when I was a kid, and everybody, it seems like every single
Yes.
person
Yeah,
wanted to
it's a
be a
very
vet on this
popular
planet.
profession, right?
Yeah,
If you're
exactly.
at a party and you're a veterinarian, you're kind of a rock star.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone wants
Well,
to tell
don't,
you their
or you're
story.
doing, yeah, or
Everyone
you're
wants to
doing
tell
the
you. Yeah,
dog's anal glands at the party too. So
exactly,
you don't want to
right.
announce
We want you to
that.
do the free service.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's hard, and I think that the emergency medicine, the nature of it is that nobody wants to see you. Period. Nobody wants to see a veterinarian at 11 o'clock on
Right.
Friday while their dog
Absolutely.
is puking, plastic bags. And then as
Exactly.
they come in, they know that they will spend a lot of money.
More
And
money, right?
then, yeah, and then it's all about the money. And you did vet school because you love money, not animals. That's like every other case that you see.
Right. All right. We take that on, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was sort of my timetable, but it was within that time that I burned out and I recovered, and I went back to practice, and I was, it was still interesting, but I got sucked into the technology, and I'm, very passionate about that, and I love veterinarians and I love animals, but I don't want to do it. I'm happy to create things that will help veterinarians because I know how hard it is, but I don't think I can do it myself anymore.
You don't want to practice anymore.
Yeah. So I think
Okay.
that's maybe where these generations are different now. Maybe it's the people that, took it. I just recently talked to a vet. She just graduated from vet school this year. She doesn't want to do it. Like she
Already.
studied
She
for, I don't
hasn't
know how
even
many
started
years.
and she doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, where do you think that
So
comes from? Where do you think that attitude? Did that come up in the survey at all? Is what is the thinking process that makes the younger veterinarians um,
I
worry
don't know.
so much about getting burned out, or
I think
what are
maybe it's
their
our expectation. My expectation of me was when I graduated that I will do that. I'll work lunch shifts, write records after it, and it was sort of like the fourth year of vet school was this is how I envisioned it, and you're always at work and you're doing this, and I was okay with it. And I think
right?
that now people value, with every next generation and millennials and then X and Z, whoever they are, they more and more value lifestyle, but I think that profession is still sort of expecting them to do those long hours and this type of work. And I think there's disconnect there. And ultimately, I think they burn out because that's what happens. But
So it's
then,
really the way we practice and the profession itself that needs to change.
yeah, I
And
think it
we're
will have
behind on
to.
that. Do you think it's because the older veterinarians are running the show, or do you think the corporation doesn't really get it? Do they get what's going on in the veterinary hospitals, the corporations that own the
It,
hospitals?
Unfortunately, most of them don't, and that's what we're finding. Most consolidators that consolidate, a lot of the executive team members are not from the veterinary domain.
Yeah,
They're very well trained, MBAs and financial people and operations, but they're not familiar with the day-to-day operations of the hospital. So it doesn't resonate with them, I think, and that's where there's so much. There are difficulties associated with improving operational efficiencies in the veterinary hospital. So the whole consolidation game is there's two parts to it. One is arbitrage. You buy as many hospitals as you can and then flip it. So that's sort of, that's the arbitrage. And the second one, those that you buy, improve operational efficiencies in them and then sell them. So I think that they're excellent in buying practices, but there's struggle to improve operational efficiency at scale. And that's the other part where I think we're applying some systematic approach like lean could help do that and improve the experience of veterinarians. So that's why I focused on both.
Oh, that yeah, I can see that for sure. I've worked in both, and I see the differences. I see the difference between privately owned practices and corporate owned practices and some of the attitudes that come along with it.
Yeah.
So other than the younger veterinarians being more burned out than the older veterinarians, was there something else in your study that stood out about the veterinary team, or
Yeah. Yeah.
what
The
else
the
did
other
you
one that we
discover?
found that was interesting but kind of expected. I don't. There was a recent study I think in Colorado, and I was kind of disappointed because as I was finishing my dissertation, I found an article that came out of Colorado using exactly the same tool. So I'm yet to see if my
Really?
mentors, yeah, will say that I
Okay.
copied their study. I
See if
hope
the
not.
results are similar.
Yeah, they're not at all. But
Oh, okay.
they surveyed. Well, there's different group. It was independent, but we just used the same tool, and they published it
Really?
before I submitted my dissertation. So,
Hmm.
but the finding that I had, they studied technicians as a group. And then what I did, I did a sort of wide range of different professionals so I could compare them. So that's what happened. And what I found out is that if you compare veterinarians to technicians, technicians are more burned out than the veterinarians.
Really?
And and we always talk about, veterinarians and the suicide rate and not another vet. And, there's a lot of speakers that talk about it. And I feel like we were kind of forgetting about technicians. So I think this is a
Absolutely.
real red flag to say, look, there's other people that work in the clinic. And in fact, I think that technicians work harder than the veterinarians. But that's just my personal opinion
No,
because
they
they,
certainly do.
yeah,
I work with them every day, and they're just running. They run themselves
yep,
ragged.
yep. And, it's being in so many hospitals that I have, being a relief veterinarian, every time I would come in, and I always was saying, I'm just a license here and you guys do the work. So tell me how you do it and I'll blend in because I don't want to disrupt your workflow here. I just,
Right.
whatever medications you use, whatever, I'm sure you've done thousands of spays. And if I'll come in right now and dictate my protocols, it's going to disturb you. So whatever you're comfortable with, I'll just do my mechanical part. So
Right. Right.
yeah, but that was sort of, and then we found a lot of support. There was another interesting sort of differential that was mixed into this study. I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody expected it, but there was COVID along the way.
And that
And
changed a lot.
yeah,
COVID has
so
changed a ton in the veterinary hospitals and the way they operate.
yeah. Well, the interesting part that from the economical side of things, the revenue went up,
Yeah.
after a small dive. But we did the survey at the time of pandemic. So I don't know if
Oh,
my study is true to the normal state, but I also don't know if will be a normal state. Hopefully we will.
right.
And
Yeah.
then also, I don't know. So we did an additional small survey on the Anesthesia Nerds Facebook group. And we just asked them whether they feel more under pressure during the COVID if compared to normal times. And absolutely technicians, the majority said that they do. But I cannot say that, let's say, veterinarians felt the same way about empowerment at work because yes, it makes sense that there's more stress, the workflows change, there's pressure, there's all these curbside things that we're doing now, telemedicine that wasn't there before. But from another angle, maybe people feel more empowered and needed because they're essential service and the I guess the feeling of being needed is maybe more, and I don't know that. These are all hypotheses.
Right.
So I
Right.
just know that the thing that may have interfered with the study is COVID, but I don't know what to make out of it. So that's just
And
a disclosure maybe.
what was the percentage difference? Like you said, the technicians were more burned out than the veterinarians by a degree of what? Like, was it huge or was
It
it
wasn't a
narrow? Or,
huge gap. It just showed that they are,
okay.
and because it wasn't percentage, veterinarians compared to technicians in percentage, they all are. And the scale was 2.04, I think, for veterinarians, and it's out of 4, and then it was a little more on the technician side. So percentage wise, I didn't slice it that way. I think
Okay.
that
Okay.
we'll
But
make the data
it was
available.
just something that stood out that the technicians are feeling more put upon at this point.
I just think that the fact that we're not focusing on it at least as much as veterinarians is probably something that flagged in this study. Even if it was equal, it doesn't matter. I think that we talk
Right.
a lot about vets, but not
Yeah.
enough
We don't
about
give the
technicians.
technicians as much support. Yeah.
And
When
they
I
are
started,
also,
oh,
yeah.
go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, when I started this podcast, it because I'm a veterinarian, it's directed at veterinarians, but I'm always very careful to include the technicians because they are such a big part of the practice and they do have the same pressures that we do pretty much. They don't have the ultimate, the buck stops with the veterinarian, but they do have everything else.
Yep.
And I see that in my practice.
Well, and the danger, I think, is the same because we lose a lot of veterinarians through the access to medications that they can use, and technicians do as well. So
Absolutely.
so having sort of the alarms around it and more thorough understanding where you at. This is in my new venture, what we are focusing on a lot in assessing how the team is feeling, because all the changes that come through consolidation, they put the stress on already stressed people. If I did the
Right.
baseline and we're burned out, put those people through consolidation when their jobs are changing. They don't know if they have a job. They don't know if they're going to have to wear a uniform that's different. They don't know. Like, it's just so much stress. And
Absolutely.
then on top of that, COVID now, and like, you really want to monitor your people before the acquisition, after acquisition, where they're at, before you push more changes on them. And of course, consolidation as the business, they want to improve things quickly because they acquired a practice, they want to put their processes in place, and rarely they do see or research enough if the team is ready for another change. Because to them, let's buy the practice and let's start doing changes. Buying a practice is already a change for them. That was a first change. They need to
Absolutely.
understand
And,
that
and
was a change.
oftentimes a very, very big change because a
Yeah.
lot of these practices have been going for years with the same
Yeah.
team, with the same owners. And now all of a
Same
sudden,
software,
yeah,
same,
it's
yeah,
all going to
yeah,
change.
yeah,
And I do think
systems and
they miss the boat and how to handle people and how each team feels as individuals.
yep,
Because in what I do, each person has their own tolerance for change.
yep,
So
yeah.
figuring
And
out
if you measure
who,
that,
who your team is would go a long way into realizing how fast you can change them.
yep, no, absolutely. And I think that paying more attention to that, and I think that the consolidation starts paying more attention. New consolidators, they emerge. There's a lot of sharing responsibilities post acquisition. There's incentives that are left behind. There's equity left behind, at least at the veterinarian level. So they're more involved. But the outcome, if you don't take care of those things, they will leave. And the biggest scarcity right now in the industry are veterinarians.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you don't take care of that, you will lose vets, and then most consolidators have multiple open positions for vets, and they can't fill them because we just don't produce enough vets.
And then you mix in COVID and we're so much busier, it just adds that much more stress to
And there's more
everyone's
pets,
plate.
and people are paying
Yeah,
more attention to their pets at home because they're
crazy.
at home with the pet. And then
Mhm.
that's why our industry went up. There was an article in New York Times talking about the veterinary industry being one of the only ones that actually went over the last year earnings on the months of COVID. And
Yeah.
that's because people got more pets. They started looking at them more because they sit at home. They wonder
Noticing
about the
things they
symptoms
never
more.
noticed before.
Exactly,
We have a lot of
exactly.
that.
So
We haven't been here in 10 years, but now all of a sudden here's this, 6 problems that my pet has.
exactly. Started yesterday, this lump.
Exactly.
I
I see
stepped on
that.
him
I
and
see
this
that a
lump
lot.
appeared. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he has an ear infection. And by the way, there's 10 other things I want you to look at. And you only have
Exactly. Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
usual.
that's a big part of it. So, after doing this study, do you have words of wisdom for either the consolidators or the veterinarians themselves or the technicians themselves? And what do we do next? Like what is something that we can do to kind of start to turn this around? Because burnout is such a huge problem. And what frustrates me and what I do is that we always talk about all these negative things, but we want to fix it. And that's part of the reason that I'm here, is to try to help people fix the way we think about our profession and see it in a more positive light, and do things to create boundaries so we don't become burned out. So what is your advice after doing this study? Do you have ideas for
So
what we can implement?
yeah, I think, the whole purpose of this was to understand, is there something we can implement? So I think that through just studying lean and lean thinking and how they did it in healthcare, my hope was to, because the master degree dissertation doesn't require you to do experiments. It's just hypothesize and connect the literature with some sort of research.
Right.
But I do want to go beyond that, and that's sort of my new venture where I'm going into right now. I do want to work with consolidation to apply certain principles, not only of lean but other management methodologies, to improve veterinarian experience as they're going through consolidation, because it seems like everybody can buy practices, or a lot of consolidation can buy practices, but transitioning from a private to consolidated practice, sustaining the positive experience and improving the processes beyond that is something that I'm passionate about right now. And that's something that I want to do, I think, in my next sort of 5 to 10 years, is try to implement what I studied and researched and try to copy what John Toussaint did in healthcare. And in the last 12 years, there's tremendous results. We've been to many hospitals and we've seen how they do it. But the only way I think we could apply it is at scale, is at the level of consolidation.
Right.
Because each individual hospital, there's just, I don't think I can do that many hospitals. And I
Right.
think that if we'll influence consolidators that are interested in that, then they have the benefit of not losing veterinarians, improving operational efficiency. Veterinarians are getting better experience. And I think overall it should help the industry. So I think that that's sort of my passion and how I want to apply that. And of course, what you're doing is tremendously important. Marie Halawachuk and others in the domain that help with the self-care, the compassion fatigue and burnout and all of those things. I think it's super important. So if we can focus on that and as a business take responsibility, I think those are sort of a couple of things that I would love to see in the upcoming years.
Okay. That sounds like the way that we all need to go.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to learn more or read the study, or learn more about what your conclusions were, how can they get a hold of that?
So we're deploying small bits and pieces of it right now through social media. You can mostly LinkedIn. So if you want to connect and sign up for news feed from me, if you can spell my last name, then you'll succeed.
I'll spell it in the show notes.
Thank you.
I'll make
Yeah.
sure
So
I put all the links in the show notes so they don't have to
thank
worry
you.
about that.
Yeah. And also you can go to our website, so vetintegrations.com. On the footer, there's links to burnout study. And we also will host a panel of discussion. We're hoping to do that on December 2nd. And I'm hoping to invite representation from the technicians, some industry speakers. I'm hoping to have veterinarian representation, and I think, have John Toussaint himself, who will share his experience from the human health. So that would be an interesting event on December 2nd.
Brainstorming event, huh?
Yeah. And then we'll kind of have that sort of brainstorm, as you said. So I think that would be very interesting and recorded and probably deployed on the Veterinary Innovation podcast as well.
Okay, I will be sure to put that in my notes as well, so people can be ready for that, because that's coming up pretty quick here, December 2nd.
We're hoping to be ready by then.
It's still in the works, huh?
Right. Well, it's not as hard as dissertation, so I'm done with that part.
Right. I'm sure that was how long did it take, actually, this whole thing? You said 3 years to get through it, but
no, the dissertation was the last year, but I was going through acquisition of the company, then,
right.
Almost 9 months at IDEX, and then new company now. So there's a lot of things along the way, and
Sure.
That's why it's stretched a little longer. But I think it's nice because it's not just like a paper that you publish and put somewhere. I actually want to put it into practice, and I'm creating the company.
So it'll turn into a life's work.
I'm hoping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it sounds like an amazing thing. It's something that we all need. So is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you think we should, that I
I
missed?
think I relate all information I have about it. That's it. I think,
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything because I think I have a much better understanding. I was a little bit, because I'm not a techie, I was a little bit wondering about the whole lean thinking and lean uh, system. So I'm glad you taught me about that a little bit. So I'm going to look a little bit more into that because I think that sounds like something that definitely would be something that you could apply, especially with the corporations. I,
yep,
I really think that that's a big piece that we're missing right now is getting the corporate people to understand what goes on the ground.
yep.
I
It
think
feels
that
like there's
there is a
disconnect.
disconnect. Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. All right. So I will put everything in the show notes. I really appreciate you being with me today, and it was really nice to meet you. And I thank
Thank
you
you.
for doing this for us. And I will put your bio and everything in the show notes too. So if people want to get a hold of you, that they know where to find you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I thank you so much. Have a great day.
You as well.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.